All right, readers, I'm asking for your help. You see, a year ago, I wrote a series called Starscopes. This is the cover of the first of the books, 4 of them. Starscopes Winter, and you'll notice very unusual, but I thought very stylish and appropriate cover picture. Winter was followed by spring, and then summer, of course, and laterally, to finish the series, fall. Now, I confess I love these books. I put my heart and soul into them, as I always do, but they were not successful, and I'm at a loss to know why. So maybe you can help me. You see, I wrote these books, and if you don't believe me, you can look back in my YouTube videos. 7 months ago, I first introduced the books, and I thought I had tied into the millennials' interests in astrology at that time. This has been a great, huge interest recently. And I'm interested in astrology, and I'm also interested in real astronomy. So I put these things in and wrapped it up in a story that I thought was pretty nearly fascinating. But I was wrong. So maybe you can help me find out why. I'm going to read you the first chapter. Chapter 1, Capricorn, December 22 to January 20. Octavia Dumley always clung to the notion that 8 must be her special number. She ignored the taunts of the children in her class who did not know the Latin derivation for her name and mocked her for being different from the Emmas and Benjamins currently at the top of the baby name lists. Her older brother Julian suffered much the same ridicule. He was called Juliet or Julie or worse for some time in school, but he developed a thick skin and a fighting style with his fists that soon warned off the more persistent kids. Their mother maintained they were fortunate to bear the names of famous Romans, and she refused to allow discussion about it. She had always kept an absorbing interest in history that added an element to her dreary daytime existence in a supermarket. It was an interest she refused to relinquish. Everybody needs something special about them. In any case, you two will be glad I gave you remarkable first names to distract you from Dumley. Eventually, she was proved right. No one who ever interviewed either of the Dumley children for a job forgot them or the brief explanation offered about their unusual name origin. Octavia had played on this exceptional characteristic for several years, but her luck ran out when the factory closed, and she was just one of the many combing the public library's internet for staff wanted ads. Her savings were few to start with. Her flatmate in the far reaches of East Kilbride decided to move in with a boyfriend, and Octavia saw her choices diminishing with her finances. She had to find a job, or she would soon be forced to go begging to her mother for her old room at home that was now serving as a mini yoga studio. In the dark and dreary week between Christmas and New Year's, Octavia ran out of options. All she had left was her name and the number it represented. After a fruitless afternoon walking the downtown streets looking for job offers in shop windows, she squashed down her pride and went to the dingy bingo hall, choosing a seat far to the rear with a view of all the old biddies and the lonely old men who occupied the tables. The caller was a thin, bored young man who barely summoned the energy to say the silly rhymes that accompanied the numbers on the balls he withdrew from a drum. The players ignored him. Their eyes were fixed firmly on the cards they had purchased. Octavia noticed most of the oldsters had several cards in front of them. She had only 2, all she could afford. She scanned the numbers and put her faith in any number with an 8 in it. Her hand shook, and the marker she was holding shook along with it. She was conscious of the desperation of this act. It was the end of the line for her. She never thought she would sink quite this low. The caller started his routine, and he spoke surprisingly fast. She had no trouble keeping up, as no number on either of her 2 cards had yet been announced by the caller. She almost rose to leave the hall. This was a waste of time and money. Suddenly she heard, "Ain't it great, number 88? If you were thinking of leaving, better just wait." Her heart gave a jolt, and her eyes scanned the cards. Yes, she had the 88 number. She marked it in fluorescent yellow, and by the time she had finished, the caller was 2 numbers ahead, and he was announcing, 18, sweetest age for a pretty teen. It seemed as if she might be on a roll. It seemed as if she was being given a message, a second chance. She stopped thinking and listened, her hand moving automatically as the numbers were called out. There was one more, 848, but it didn't matter because she was rapidly filling one card, and she was stunned at her success until a woman far down in the hall stood up and yelled, "Bingo!" There was a chorus of groans, and several cigarettes were surreptitiously lit up in despair. Octavia watched this woman move to the front, waving her full card triumphantly over her head. What happened? Could there be 2 identical cards? She looked again at her card, glowing at her with circled number 8s. Then she jumped up and ran down the centre aisle to the stage, where the young man was double-checking the woman's card against his penciled list. "Sorry, my love, you marked 16, not 18 in that line. Better luck next time." The woman turned away with a disappointed face and downturned lip. The caller said to Octavia, "What can I do for you, darling? New here? Need another card? The next game's about to start." She held up her card, and his eyebrows danced up to his spotty forehead as his eyes ran down the highlighted numbers. "Yes, folks," he announced, "we do have a winner for that round after all. She's a winner beginner. Don't worry now, the rest of the night's winnings are for you regulars for sure." He quickly signed his initials and pushed her away toward the desk where she had purchased the 2 cards on entering the hall. The next game had commenced, but Octavia felt as if invisible daggers were being tossed toward her back. Undoubtedly, the regulars hated to see a newcomer steal their rightful winnings. She couldn't wait to get out of there. She pocketed the envelope offered to her and fled out into the street, where she took her first deep breath in what felt like hours. She glanced at her watch. It was just past 8 o'clock. She'd been in the bingo hall for much less than an hour. It was a dark, damp evening. Shoppers rushed by with heads down, intent on reaching their bus stops and a ride home. She should be running with them, but the thought of the long, cold, bumpy ride back to East Kilbride was something she just couldn't face. On an impulse, Octavia merely pulled up the hood of her raincoat and stood shivering in the chilling wind. The centre of Glasgow was a grim place at this time of night. She decided to seek shelter in a corner coffee shop where she could look safely inside the envelope she held tight in her right hand within her coat pocket. The coffee shop was warm and smelled wonderful. As soon as the heavy door swung closed behind her, she began to feel more positive. It was an age since she spent money in such a place. She stumbled for a second. The floor was wet with footprints and drips from drenched overcoats. She could not move forward to the counter where orders were taken because she had no cash left. Unless whatever was in the envelope could allow her the treat she now desired above everything in the world. To be able to sit in comfort, sipping coffee and nibbling on a sweet treat like normal people suddenly became the epitome of all luxury. She sidled away to a table near the windows where steam from the coffee machines made the bleak outside scene dim and distant. With her back against the window, she carefully removed the envelope from her pocket and placed it on her knees where no one else could see it. With trembling fingers, she opened the flap and looked inside. Cash, actual notes, mostly small denominations, but many of them. She gasped and then looked around to see if anyone at a nearby table had noticed. She knew not to start counting the notes. That would be inviting trouble. She extracted the first one with the number 10 on it and stuffed the rest back into her pocket again. As she stood, she noticed her legs were trembling. Cold or excitement, it did not matter now. There was no one in the lineup. She walked carefully over the wet patches on the floor to the cash register and ordered a large coffee with cream and 1 sugar, and then she looked at the display cabinet, brightly lit, show every grain of sugar and shine of blaze, every raisin and chocolate sprinkle, every muffin and biscuit and cream cake. The girl behind the counter was waiting to take the rest of her order. Deciding was difficult. Then she caught sight of a twist of pastry with cinnamon on top. It was in a figure 8. She laughed out loud and pointed to the bottom shelf of the glass case. "That! I'll have 2 of those, please." In moments, she paid, pocketed the change, and received a tray with her coffee and the 2 pastries on a plate. 88! Side by side, they make the number 88. Is this a sign my luck is changing? The pastries deserved all her attention. As the cinnamon melted into the buttery outer layer, her tongue reacted with delight. This was the best taste ever. The fact that she had not eaten all day or imbibed more than 1 cup of tea was likely the reason for her reaction. But the lights in the cafe seemed brighter, the coffee sweeter, and everything around her more full of promise. She began to relax and noticed it was a new sensation. Now she felt like the tide had turned. Possibilities she feared gone forever seemed to be back in her future. She could make a plan. The table nearest her emptied as a man and a woman scraped back their chairs and exited. They left a newspaper lying on the table. She stretched out her hand and scooped it up. Another opportunity to find a job? If her luck was turning, she must not neglect this chance. Reading rapidly through the wanted column, she felt like she was seeing things she would not have noticed previously. In one section, she found 2 places where help was needed urgently. Temporary receptionist required immediately. Good appearance and pleasant manner essential. Apply in person to 828 Beauty Spa, Argyle Street, Glasgow. She knew at once this was the choice for her. She would apply first thing in the morning after choosing her best business outfit, washing her shoulder-length brown hair, brushing it to a shine. She was not dismayed by the temporary nature of the work. All the signs pointed to her success, and it could lead to other opportunities. She would be in employment for her birthday, which was coming up in 2 weeks. As this happy thought occurred, she turned the pages of the newspaper to read her horoscope. If everything that had happened in the last few hours is a trend, perhaps it would be clarified in her star sign. Capricorn, December 22 to January 20. It has been a dark time for you, Capricorn, but do not despair. The new year brings a brighter future. Take charge of your life. Make bold choices and fortune will smile upon you. Numbers 3, 6, and 8 are predominant. And so begins the journey of Octavia Dunley. And this book takes you to the west of Scotland, to the island of Skye, and to other more exotic places later on in the series. But you are going to enjoy Octavia and everything that happens to her. So, did I get the cover pictures wrong? Is that what discouraged people from reading this series? Is it something else? Something I missed? Was it the inclusion of something a little bit higher level in the books that were there intermittently? I don't know. Maybe you'll have to read one to tell me what you think. I hope you will. I hope you'll give them a try. I'm not going to cry about this. I promise I won't cry. But do try.